The years of quiet endurance, the simmering resentment, finally boiled over. It wasn't just the infidelity anymore, it was the audacity, the cruelty that had finally shattered the carefully constructed facade of my life. My husband, Kaelen, had been unfaithful for years. I knew. I'd chosen to ignore it, for the sake of our daughter, Seraphina. But when his mistress, Jezebel, orchestrated a hit-and-run that nearly killed Seraphina, my carefully controlled world imploded. And when Kaelen and Jezebel, during a savage confrontation, are nearly killed, leaving them both clinging precariously to life, I will make a choice. I will reject the pleas of the doctors. Doctor, I'll say, my voice steady, a mask of composure over a raging inferno, please. I have to help my daughter with her homework. The phone call had come, sharp and intrusive, slicing through the mundane routine of my afternoon. Mrs. Anya Thorne, your daughter has been in an accident. She's been taken to City General Hospital. The voice of Seraphina's headmistress, Mrs. Davies, blurred into a dizzying hum. My vision swam, blackness threatening to consume me. Seraphina was my anchor, my reason for breathing. The thought of her hurt, of her gone, was a physical blow. I remember the taxi ride in a haze of terror, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold my phone. I stumbled out of the cab, my legs weak and unreliable, and practically ran into the emergency room, scraping my knees on the unforgiving pavement. The world was a blur of sterile white walls and the acrid smell of antiseptic. When I finally found the surgeon emerging from the operating room, his face etched with exhaustion, I braced myself for the worst. He told me Seraphina was stable, that if she made it through the night, she could be moved from the ICU to a regular room. Relief washed over me, weak but profound. It was a temporary reprieve, a fragile thread of hope. My first instinct was to call Kaelen. He should be here. He needed to be here. But when the call connected, a woman's voice, unfamiliar yet chillingly recognizable in its youthful cadence, answered. Hello? I gripped the phone tighter, forcing myself to maintain the composure expected of a woman of my social standing. The hospital corridor seemed to shrink, the sounds of hushed conversations and beeping machines fading into the background. Is this a new secretary? I asked, my voice deceptively calm, offering her an easy way out. Could you please put Mr. Forrester on the phone? A soft, almost purred was the response, tinged with a smug satisfaction that sent a chill down my spine. When Kaelen finally took the phone, his voice was a mixture of annoyance and practiced charm. I told him about Seraphina, about the accident, the surgery, the agonizing wait. His response was a masterpiece of dismissive indifference. I'm incredibly busy today, Anya. There are documents that need my immediate attention. I won't be able to make it. Just let me know what you need, and I'll have Zara, his secretary, pick it up and send it home. The urge to scream, to unleash the years of pent-up fury, was almost overwhelming. My jaw ached from clenching it so tightly. I bit the inside of my lip until I tasted blood, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. All right, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. You take care of yourself, too. I'll be here with Seraphina. The sounds on the other end of the line were unmistakable, soft moans, the rustle of fabric. My stomach churned. I didn't need to imagine what was happening. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a cold, mechanical sound. In a fit of rage, I hurled my brand new iPhone against the hospital wall. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. I'm so sorry, I mumbled, automatically apologizing to the startled onlookers in the hallway. I picked up the pieces, my hands shaking, and walked towards the ICU, my heart heavy with a grief that went far beyond my daughter's current condition. Through the glass, I watched Seraphina, so small and fragile, hooked up to machines that beeped and whirred. She was innocent. She hadn't asked for any of this. This was the result of adult selfishness, of a world she was too young to understand. I borrowed a phone from a nurse, ordered 2 replacement phones to be delivered by Zara, and, after she left, made a call. It was a number I knew by heart, one I'd never dared to save in my contacts. A digitally altered voice answered, laced with a cynical amusement. Anya, calling again? Need me to tail the mistress, gather evidence for the divorce settlement? I ignored the taunt. I transferred 50,000 credits to an anonymous account. This time, it's not about infidelity. My voice cracked. I glanced back at Seraphina, lying unconscious in the hospital bed. I need you to find out who was driving the car that hit my daughter near Evergreen Primary School today. And who put them up to it. The voice on the other end, now noticeably more respectful after receiving the payment, agreed without hesitation. Money, it seemed, could buy even a hacker's loyalty. I leaned back against the cold, sterile wall of the hospital corridor, letting the weight of the day crush me. For the first time, I regretted my restraint, my years of careful planning and calculated patience. I should have screamed. I should have fought. I should have ripped Kaelen's carefully constructed world apart years ago. I knew about Kaelen's affairs. I'd known from the very beginning, from the first time he'd strayed. I had been a bright, ambitious student, accepted into Stanford for my graduate studies. But then I'd gotten pregnant, unexpectedly, with Kaelen's child. For Seraphina, I'd sacrificed my dreams, marrying him in a hasty ceremony. That marriage had been the beginning of my slow descent into this living hell. Kaelen's interest in me had been fleeting, a superficial attraction that faded quickly. He was a modern-day hunter, a man who openly flaunted his infidelities, a cruel, selfish narcissist. But because of a prenuptial agreement, divorce was not an option. It would mean losing custody of Seraphina and all financial security. So, I'd endured. I'd turned a blind eye, pretending not to see the parade of women, the whispered phone calls, the blatant disrespect. My phone buzzed with an incoming message, an anonymous MMS. The hacker, a notorious figure known for his ability to uncover secrets within our elite social circle, had delivered. The screenshots were damning. It was Jezebel, Kaelen's current mistress, Una, who had instructed a debt-ridden lowlife to run down my daughter. If it hadn't been for Seraphina's quick-thinking teachers, who had immediately called for an ambulance, the outcome would have been unthinkable. Anya, are you going to stand for this? The hacker's voice was almost incredulous. This is beyond disgusting. Look, for another 50,000, I can make her life a living hell. Socially ruin her. No, I said, my voice tight with suppressed rage. I had to stay focused. I'll handle this myself. I wanted her to suffer. I wanted her and Kaelen to destroy each other. And I knew exactly who would be the instrument of their destruction. I opened my social media, navigating to a private account with only a handful of followers. It belonged to Valentine, Kaelen's newest conquest, a girl he'd taken under his wing a year ago. She was the perfect weapon. I knew Valentine's background intimately. A broken home, a deceased father, a stepmother who cared only for her own son. Valentine had been sexually abused by her stepbrother, forced to quit school to support him and her stepmother. Reaching out to a girl like Valentine was easy. All it took was a carefully crafted persona. I presented myself as a wealthy, abused housewife, using a hammer to create convincing bruises on my face. It wasn't long before we were connected, sharing secrets and confidences. Valentine's stepmother and stepbrother were leeches, draining her of every penny Kaelen gave her. She was living a double life, a mistress forced to work a low-paying job as a beautician. Befriending her was simple, money and a little patience. Several large tips, paying for her adult education courses, quickly earned her trust. She began to confide in me, treating me like an older sister. Anya, I don't know what to do, she confessed one day, after giving me a facial. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her expression a mixture of fear and despair. I'm pregnant. This was an unexpected, but welcome, development. I congratulated her, adding another generous tip to celebrate. Then, I arranged a lunch with several of my friends, women who were, at best, frenemies. They were the wives of executives who had business dealings with Kaelen's company. They were superficially polite, addressing me as Mrs. Forrester, but I knew they mocked me behind my back, calling me a cuckold and a doormat. They were perfect for spreading rumors. First, I flaunted my new 2-carat diamond ring and my 5 million credit jade necklace, watching their eyes burn with envy. Then, I casually mentioned Valentine. I've met this wonderful, ambitious young woman, I said. She's had a difficult life, but she's so determined to improve herself. It's truly inspiring. They responded with forced smiles and polite nods. It was when I mentioned the beauty salon where Valentine worked that their eyes lit up. Clearly, they knew who she was. I praised Valentine to the skies, watching them struggle to contain their amusement. They were, no doubt, enjoying the spectacle, believing I was oblivious to the fact that Valentine was my husband's mistress. Then, I dropped the bomb. You should all support her, I said, my voice dripping with feigned sincerity. Go to her salon, get a membership. She's pregnant, and she needs the money. It'll help her with her commissions. The reaction was immediate. Their eyes widened, like predators scenting blood. I knew the news would spread like wildfire through our social circle. Jezebel, ever vigilant and desperate to climb the social ladder, would hear about it. Seraphina was a threat to her, I am a threat to her. Now, what of Valentine? A younger, more beautiful woman, favored by Kaelen, and now carrying his child? I poured myself a glass of red wine. The liquid swirled in the glass, a deep, crimson color. The color of blood. Like the blood that flowed from Valentine's body, as reported on the news. Jezebel had been even more ruthless than I'd anticipated. Upon hearing the news, she had gathered her family and stormed Valentine's apartment, beating her until she miscarried. This shameless harlot seduced my husband, Jezebel screamed to the online world, and now she's trying to use her pregnancy to force me out. I'm his wife, the one who stood by him through thick and thin. And now this cheap tramp is trying to steal everything? If she gets away with this, what kind of world are we living in? Her words were eloquent, almost echoing my own sentiments. But Jezebel, of all people, had no right to say those words. Because of my silence, because I, Kaelen's legal wife, had remained hidden in the shadows, she had dared to impersonate me, to commit this atrocity in my name. As I watched the online outrage directed at Kaelen Forrester's legal wife, I calmly closed the social media app and went to the hospital, carrying a bag of supplements. It was Seraphina's discharge day. Seeing her finally healthy and vibrant, I allowed myself a genuine smile. Mommy, that auntie looks so sad. Seraphina pointed upstairs, to where Valentine was preparing to jump from the window. I panicked, quickly arranging for my assistant to take Seraphina home. I rushed upstairs and pulled Valentine away from the ledge. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why would you want to end your life? Valentine's beautiful face was pale and drawn. She recognized me and forced a weak smile. Anya, it's you. I didn't expect you to be the one to stop me. She collapsed in my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Finally, her voice choked with tears, she whispered, Anya, I lost the baby. And I can't even seek justice. I'm the other woman. I have no right to demand justice. I gently stroked her hair, comforting her. But behind her back, a smile crept across my face. The plan was working. I had gained her trust. Now, it was time to wield this weapon. Valentine fainted in my arms, overcome with grief. I had her transferred to a private VIP room. When she woke up, I was peeling an apple for her, shaping it into a little rabbit. It was a trick I used to get Seraphina to take her medicine. Valentine held the apple rabbit, tears streaming down her face. Anya, you're the kindest person to me since my father died. I comforted her with gentle words, like a mother soothing her child. She cried until she was exhausted, leaning against me and recounting how she had met Kaelen. My brother got into trouble, she began, her voice trembling. I wished he would just die, so I could be free. But my stepmother wouldn't let him. She took my ID, forced me to entertain Mr. Forrester. If I refused, she threatened to sell me to Southeast Asia. I was terrified. I had no choice. I became Mr. Forrester's mistress. He was generous, but my mother and brother never let me have any peace. They saw me as nothing more than a source of money and pleasure. Anya, I want to study. I really want to go back to school. But I'll never have the chance now. Valentine cried like a child, her pain raw and unfiltered. I felt a pang of empathy. I, too, had been a girl yearning for an education. But a carefully orchestrated pregnancy had destroyed my future. She was like me, and yet, she wasn't. If I had endured what she had, I might have chosen to end my life. Social death, a ruined reputation, a miscarriage, permanent infertility. Valentine had also learned the consequences of interfering in someone else's marriage. After much deliberation, I finally steeled myself and told her the truth. Valentine, you deserve justice, I said, my voice firm. Don't tell me you have no right, because you're the other woman. The Mr. Forrester you mentioned, my husband knows him. They have business dealings. I went to Mr. Forrester's birthday party with him once, and I met Mrs. Forrester. It wasn't the woman who attacked you. Everyone in our circle knows that woman is also a mistress. I pulled out my phone, showing her a few photos of Kaelen with his cousin, who had emigrated abroad. Valentine took my phone, her hands trembling. She was furious, her eyes blazing with anger. How could that bitch, Una, do this to me? I'll sue her. I quickly stopped her. Suing her won't do any good. At most, she'll break up with Kaelen. She'll still have all the money she's gotten from him. She'll have suffered virtually no consequences. She can move to another city and pretend to be a wealthy socialite. Hearing my words, Valentine deflated, sinking back onto the bed. Anya, what should I do? I smiled at her. Men are weak to a woman's charms. Valentine was quick to understand. Or perhaps, a woman consumed by revenge learns quickly. She quickly recovered, pretending nothing had happened and resuming her relationship with Kaelen. But she subtly hinted at Jezebel's arrogance and tyranny. Of course, in her narrative, Jezebel was Kaelen Forrester's legal wife. At first, Kaelen tried to downplay the situation, telling her not to provoke Jezebel. But soon, with my and her encouragement, Jezebel became increasingly brazen. I took the opportunity to use Kaelen's phone to invite Jezebel to the company. Kaelen might be a philanderer, but he maintained a public image of a devoted husband. His company's reputation was deeply intertwined with his personal image. And I, as his legal wife, was known to his business associates. If his infidelity were exposed. I thought of the company's plummeting stock price and smiled. I encouraged Valentine to use her pillow talk to show Kaelen text messages proving Jezebel was threatening to humiliate her at the office. Kaelen, seeing the messages where Jezebel boasted about publicly slapping her, was terrified. He rushed to the company, forgetting to even put on his tie. Meanwhile, I, carrying a pot of lotus root soup, sat in the VIP lounge on the second floor, watching the drama unfold below. Kaelen slapped Jezebel hard across the face. Her face swelled up immediately. Who gave you permission to come here and cause a scene? Jezebel, her voice trembling, pulled out her phone. You texted me and told me to come. Her phone, of course, would contain no evidence. I had used a disposable phone, purchased at a high price from the hacker, one used for untraceable cryptocurrency transactions. The messages self-destructed after being sent, leaving no trace online. So, when Jezebel showed her phone, there was no message from me. Kaelen was furious. He snatched her phone and threw it to the ground. Where's the message? Show it to me. Jezebel's head was drenched in sweat. She knelt down to pick up her phone, her body shaking. She muttered, how could this be, how could it be, it was there. How could it be there? I laughed silently from my vantage point. Kaelen kicked her in the head. Enough. You're being unreasonable, and you disgust me. If you weren't pregnant, I'd throw you out of the apartment I bought for you. Jezebel, realizing Kaelen was about to cut her off, panicked. She apologized profusely, slinking away in defeat. I deliberately took photos of her being slapped by Kaelen, planning to give them to Valentine later. But for now. I straightened my clothes, picked up the lotus root soup, and knocked on Kaelen's office door. He was visibly flustered when he saw me. I pretended to be concerned. Who was that girl just now? Why were you so harsh with her? Women have feelings, too. I was Kaelen's most gentle and virtuous wife, always trusting and loyal, never interfering in his affairs. Caught off guard by my sudden questioning, Kaelen stammered, trying to find an excuse, afraid of failing to deceive me. Especially now, in the company, he couldn't afford to lose his temper with me. If he did, I would have ample reason to escalate the situation. The media would report it, and a thorough investigation would expose his infidelity. And his company's image was inextricably linked to his personal image. Kaelen couldn't afford to gamble. Finally, he said, she's a bar girl who's been harassing me. Anya, you know how it is in the business world, all those social events. I seized the opportunity to showcase my virtue, placing my hand over his mouth. You don't have to explain. I trust you. He breathed a sigh of relief, sipping the lotus root soup and praising me. I then smoothly introduced my long-planned scheme. Kaelen, I heard from some friends that there are plans to develop the land outside the city. You know, Juniper's husband is in the government. Although the development is still a long way off, I want to get in early. I want to leave the land to Seraphina as a dowry in the future. He was taken aback. But the land outside the city, it's a large area. Maybe we should reconsider. How could I reconsider? This was the moment he felt the most guilty towards me. There would be no better opportunity. I quickly wiped away a tear. Kaelen, you know I've never asked you for anything all these years. But you're so busy. You were too busy to come to the hospital when Seraphina had her accident. I'm really worried that you'll be too busy in the future to support Seraphina. You know how arrogant the boys in this circle can be. I'm afraid Seraphina will be bullied by her in-laws if she doesn't have a dowry to back her up. I deliberately started to cry, loud enough for the gossiping employees outside the office to hear. Kaelen was terrified, his heart nearly leaping out of his throat. He quickly hugged me, comforting me in a soft voice and carefully wiping away my tears. Okay. How could I neglect Seraphina? It's just that buying that land will drain all our liquid assets. We'll only be left with living expenses. That was exactly what I wanted. For our daughter, a little hardship is nothing. I pretended to cry again. Kaelen was petrified. He immediately instructed Zara to finalize the land purchase. I only stopped crying when I received the purchase certificate, taking the empty soup container and returning home. Immediately, I covered the owner's name on the certificate and sent a photo to Valentine. I found this on Mrs. Forrester's social media. Use this picture to provoke Una. It'll make her so jealous she'll go crazy and cause another scene, eventually annoying Mr. Forrester so much that he'll break up with her, and Mrs. Forrester will reclaim the marital property given to her. Valentine, consumed by revenge and not thinking about the risk, took the certificate and went to confront Jezebel. I reserved a VIP seat at a cafe Valentine had pre-booked, sipping tea and watching the two women tear each other apart. Valentine slapped the video of Jezebel being kicked and humiliated by Kaelen in her face, her expression full of mockery. Weren't you boasting about beating up the mistress? Weren't you claiming to be the wronged wife? Oh, how come you were beaten like this by your husband in public? No way, the so-called legal wife of Mr. Forrester was beaten, and didn't dare to say a word? How come I heard from the employees of Mr. Forrester's company that Mr. Forrester was driving away a bar girl who was trying to climb the ladder? Jezebel's newly done nose job was almost crooked with anger. She furiously tried to attack Valentine. But Valentine, no longer intimidated by Jezebel, knowing she wasn't Kaelen's legal wife, slapped her back across the face. What are you pretending to be? Before, I felt sorry for Mr. Forrester's wife, so I let you hit me. Now that I know you're just another mistress, do you think I'll tolerate you? The two women fought fiercely. I sat in my VIP seat, sipping my tea slowly and ordering another serving of snacks for Valentine. The battle was intense, ending with Jezebel's mouth bleeding. Jezebel, pampered for years, was no match for Valentine, who had survived the harsh realities of the lower class. Finally, Jezebel pointed a finger at Valentine, uttering a threat, and left in disgrace. I beckoned Valentine over to eat the snacks, took her to the hospital to ice and bandage the scratches Jezebel had inflicted, and instructed her to keep Kaelen with her that night. Meanwhile, I arranged another afternoon tea with my frenemies. The gossipy wives, probably having heard about the fight between Jezebel and Valentine, rushed over to see me make a fool of myself. How could I let them see that? I pretended to be completely unaware of Kaelen's infidelity, showing off the land purchase certificate Kaelen had bought for me, with only Seraphina's name on it. I have to say, our Kaelen is different from other men. He values boys and girls equally. Our Seraphina is still young, but Kaelen is already preparing her dowry. The gossipy wives superficially expressed envy and congratulations, but behind my back, they were probably sticking pins into a voodoo doll of me. One of them immediately sent a message to her friends, dripping with sarcasm and envy. That wasn't important. What was important was that Jezebel saw it. Did she want to steal the family fortune? I would provoke her, make her see how much Kaelen valued my daughter. Only then would she be driven to do something even more insane. And then, the law would not spare her. I arranged for the hacker to monitor her every move and went home to be with my daughter. Unexpectedly, when I entered the house, I saw Kaelen hugging Seraphina, sitting on the sofa and watching cartoons. Seeing me, Kaelen put on a show of affection, embracing me and showering me with love. I suppressed my disgust, playing the role of the good wife, adjusting his collar and smoothing his hair. During dinner, Kaelen suddenly asked me, "Why did you suddenly post about buying the land on social media?" My hand, holding the chopsticks, tightened, but my expression remained unchanged. I just wanted to show off how much our Seraphina is valued. To let those difficult women see it and warn their spoiled sons not to bully our Seraphina. It's also a warning to them that our family won't be looked down upon just because Seraphina is a girl. We value her just as much. My reason was sufficient, perfect, and in line with my image as a housewife completely devoted to her child. Kaelen looked at me scrutinizingly for a while, then looked away. It seemed he believed me. I was about to say something to change the subject when Kaelen's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, his expression changing drastically. He mumbled something about an important project and rushed to the balcony. How convenient. To prevent the cat from escaping and jumping off the 29th floor, I had installed a surveillance camera on the balcony. In the video, Kaelen's face was grim. He was yelling furiously at the person on the other end of the line. "I told you not to bother me unless it's important. Do you know how much trouble you've caused me lately?" Jezebel's voice was trembling, sounding as if she were crying. "Kaelen, how can you say that to me?" Kaelen impatiently hung up. Just as he was about to enter the living room, the phone rang again. He angrily yelled, "What do you want? Are you insane?" The voice on the other end paused, then dropped a bombshell. "Kaelen, I'm pregnant." I saw Kaelen freeze in the video, his mind seemingly shutting down. "Kaelen, this is the fruit of our love. Please come and see. This child cannot be born." "Get rid of it," Kaelen said coldly. "You know how important my image is. If you dare to have this child behind my back, you know what I'm capable of." I smiled, marveling at Jezebel's naivety. But then, my smile faded. Jezebel, in a desperate gamble, said, "Kaelen, I went to Hong Kong for a checkup. It's a boy. I know you've always wanted a son, that's why I'm telling you. I know your wife has difficulty conceiving. Your family's large fortune, you can't let a girl inherit it, can you? Kaelen, I'm not asking for any status. I've been with you for so many years, and I've never caused any trouble with your wife. This time, it's really. Kaelen, you need an heir. I'm not asking you to divorce your wife. I just want this child to be able to see his father, to be your helper in the future, to inherit your business. Your wife and daughter were born to enjoy life. Let this boy handle the company's affairs. I don't want any status, just for this boy to take care of me in my old age. Kaelen, I'm begging you, please let this child be born." Kaelen was silent. I stroked his face on the screen, wishing my fingers were knives, blades that could cut him into 1,000 pieces. I knew he was tempted. For the sake of a son. When he returned to the living room, I had already discreetly turned off the surveillance video. Kaelen hugged Seraphina and asked her, "Seraphina, when Daddy is old, what will you do?" Seraphina, innocent and pure, touched Kaelen's face. "Seraphina will take care of Daddy. Seraphina will manage the company, and Daddy can stay home with Mommy and watch cartoons." Kaelen laughed heartily, but his words made me unable to laugh. He said, "Seraphina is Daddy's treasure. Seraphina should enjoy life. Seraphina doesn't need to worry about the company. Daddy will take care of it." Take care of it? It was still all about favoring a son, deciding to give everything to a son. My hand slipped, and the plate I was about to put into the dishwasher fell to the floor, shattering into pieces. My finger was cut by the broken porcelain, and blood dripped onto the floor. Kaelen heard the noise and rushed into the kitchen to bandage my finger. "You shouldn't do these chores. Hire a housekeeper. You've suffered with me, now you should enjoy life." Enjoy life. How dare Kaelen say those words? I pulled my hand away, pretending to be obedient and gentle. Taking care of this home is also my responsibility. There are some things I don't trust housekeepers with. By the way, Kaelen, I want to transfer my shares to Seraphina in a few days. Can you give me some of your shares? I saw his face stiffen. Without a doubt, he was planning to secretly transfer his shares to that unborn son. Seraphina is still young, there's no rush. How can there be no rush? You don't know, I had lunch with those wives today, and they gave me such a hard time because they have sons. I deliberately interrupted Kaelen, adding fuel to the fire. They all said that our company will eventually be given to an outsider. I won't allow that. I want them to see that our Seraphina is much better than their ordinary sons. In the future, their precious sons will be working for our Seraphina. I wanted to see if Kaelen had any conscience left. Kaelen hesitated, stalling. The shares, it's not urgent. You know, I have a big project right now. If there's a change in share ownership now, and the partners find out, it'll be embarrassing for me. My heart sank. I had lost the gamble. I heard from Valentine that Kaelen hadn't been visiting her much lately. Fewer visits meant less money. When I arrived at Valentine's apartment, the door was ajar. Through the crack, I saw her sprawled on the floor, her hair clutched in the fist of a brutish man. She screamed in pain. Beside her stood a woman with sharp cheekbones and a cruel expression, slapping Valentine across both cheeks. Stop crying. If you keep it up, I'll cut out your tongue. Mom, don't. We still need her to entertain Mr. Forrester. We can't damage her until he's done with her and thrown her away. Do you think I don't know that? I'm just worried she'll scream so loud that the nosy neighbors will call the police. The woman kicked Valentine again. You useless thing. You couldn't even keep Mr. Forrester's child. Do you know how much money that child could have brought your brother? Your brother's bride price, his wedding house, that child could have gotten us all of it. But you useless thing, couldn't keep the child, and you embarrassed us. Now you can't even keep Mr. Forrester on the hook. The woman's spittle sprayed across Valentine's face. I don't care what you have to do, but in the next 2 days, you must get Mr. Forrester back on your side. Get him to send your brother 500,000, or else, you'll regret it. Valentine, like a helpless child, didn't dare speak, enduring the abuse. I couldn't stand it anymore. I pushed the door open. Stop it. Valentine's brother, a violent man, instinctively moved to attack me. But his mother was more perceptive. Seeing my Hermes bag, she immediately put on a welcoming smile. Oh, madam, you are. I figured she thought I was the wronged wife, coming to settle the score. Which, technically, I was. But for Valentine's safety, I couldn't reveal my identity. Otherwise, after getting a breakup fee from me, Valentine would be worthless to them. I shuddered to think what those ruthless mother and son might do. I'm a regular customer of Valentine's. I'm here for a facial. Hearing I wasn't the wife, Valentine's mother's face immediately turned cold. Oh, I see. Although her expression was cold, she was still wary of my designer clothes, so her tone remained somewhat polite. Madam, this is a family matter. I advise you not to interfere. Valentine's brother cracked his knuckles at me, a threatening gesture. With people like this, threats and reasoning were useless. Only material incentives would work. I took out my phone and transferred 50,000 credits to Valentine's account. Her phone immediately beeped with the notification. Valentine's mother's face underwent a 180-degree transformation, instantly becoming fawning. Oh, madam, you're so generous. You must have business with Valentine. I won't disturb you. Having gotten their money, their blood fix, they glared at Valentine and left, grinning. I closed the door and locked it. Valentine lowered her head, her voice muffled. Anya, I'm sorry you had to see that. I applied a cold compress to her swollen face. I accidentally touched a broken patch of skin, and she winced in pain. Have your mother and brother always treated you like this? She gave a bitter laugh, her voice filled with helplessness and, more so, despair. It's been like this for years. That was the first time I'd seen Valentine so hollow, so empty. The girl who saved money to go back to school seemed like a façade, a fragile mask. She was hateful, yet also pitiful. After the terrible price she'd paid, I couldn't hate her. I felt only pity. Perhaps, deep down, I also hated Kaelen, so his infidelity couldn't hurt me. I could forgive his betray, just not his mistake of hurting Seraphina. I comforted Valentine for a while, and after careful consideration, I asked her. Do you want to escape this life? She nodded, then shook her head. Anya, you can't help me. I placed a finger on her lips, lowering my voice and whispering in her ear. What if these two people were dead? Her eyes widened, but she quickly calmed down. Anya, can this plan really work? I nodded. She was silent for a long time, then, like a drowning person grasping at a piece of driftwood, she clutched my wrist. Anya, thank you. I transferred another 30,000 credits to her, to help her stabilize her brother and stepmother in the short term. It was also bait. These two people had to be eliminated. A fish has no right to discuss with the chef whether it will be steamed or braised tonight. They could only choose whether or not to take the bait. But these two greedy fish clearly didn't hesitate to swallow the hook. Before I left, Valentine suddenly called out to me. Anya, who are you, really? She was a smart girl. She couldn't have missed it. I turned my head, raising a finger to my lips. Shoo. Don't say it. She smiled at me, and didn't ask further. I had made arrangements for her, and was thinking about how to get Kaelen to visit her more often. Unexpectedly, I received a call from Seraphina's school. They said she had swallowed an excessive amount of sleeping pills in the school nurse's office. My mind went blank. I nearly fainted. When I arrived at the school, the headmistress, Mrs. Davies, finally managed to calm me down. A group of older boys had played a prank in the nurse's office, replacing the sleeping pills in the bottle with candy. Otherwise, my daughter might not have survived. I couldn't understand why Seraphina would suddenly do something so desperate. It wasn't until her first words after waking up that I realized how arrogant I'd been, how much I'd underestimated my enemy. Seraphina hugged me, sobbing uncontrollably. Mommy, that auntie said Daddy doesn't want me, and because of me, he doesn't want Mommy either. He wants to marry her and her baby brother. Mommy, if I died, would Daddy not leave you? I comforted my daughter, my eyes cold. No, sweetheart. Daddy won't leave Mommy, and he won't leave you. It was he who deserved to die, along with that vile woman, Jezebel. I sent Seraphina to stay with my parents. My parents, although just retired teachers from a working-class background, had no preference for sons over daughters, and they certainly wouldn't treat me coldly like Kaelen's mother did. I had originally planned to give Jezebel more time. But she shouldn't have crossed my bottom line. My daughter was my inviolable scale. Touch her, and Jezebel must die. Take Kaelen with her to the grave. Didn't she want to be the new Mrs. Forrester? Fine. I will give her the chance. I immediately arranged another tea party with my friends, naturally including those big mouths. As soon as they arrived, I started to cry. What am I going to do? I heard that our Kaelen is having an affair. My friends had been waiting for this moment for 3 or 4 years. Ever since Seraphina was born, they'd been waiting for a chance to laugh at me. But I had been such a flawless Mrs. Forrester that they'd never found an opportunity. Now, how could they pass up this chance to stick a knife in me? Don't cry, sis. What happened? A few days ago, that mistress came to my door, flaunting her pregnancy, mocking me for being a barren hen. She said her name is Jezebel, and she's been with Kaelen for 5 or 6 years. Our Seraphina is only 7. I deliberately emphasized Jezebel's name so that these friends would highlight her when they boasted on social media, using her to put me down. This way, Jezebel would truly cross Kaelen's line. She also said she's pregnant, and that she'll kick us mother and daughter out of the house. She said that if I knelt down and begged her, she'd consider letting Seraphina work as a maid in the house, ensuring Seraphina wouldn't starve. Why is my life so bitter? I cried, my tears flowing like rain. As I wiped my eyes, I gestured to the hacker, who was secretly observing, to take a video. Once these friends had had their fill of my misery, the hacker signaled to me that she had finished filming. I dealt with these friends perfunctorily, posting a vaguely sad and pained message on social media. These friends eagerly liked, commented, and shared it. At the same time, I had the hacker hack into one of my friends' accounts, take screenshots, and post them along with the video. Within half a day, the news of Kaelen's affair topped the trending charts, completely destroying his image as a good man. The company's stock price plummeted. I could imagine Kaelen's fury. Hearing the sound of a car engine stopping in the courtyard, I picked up the phone. It was Valentine. As soon as I answered, I started to act, complaining. The door opened, and footsteps approached. I mustered all my emotions, yelling into the phone. I misjudged you. After all these years of friendship, you're treating me like a joke. Even though that woman named Jezebel came to flaunt her pregnancy in front of me, I didn't say anything. I only confided in you privately. This is a private matter between my husband and me. Don't air dirty laundry in public. What do you mean you didn't take the video? If you didn't take it, then explain to me, how did those screenshots of the social media posts get out there? Who else could it be but you, stirring up trouble behind my back? After yelling, I started to sob quietly. It's okay if I suffer a little. Every couple has their ups and downs. But how could you, under the guise of helping me, make this a public scandal? What? You're saying that mistress, Jezebel, also contacted you? She provoked you into showing off? Couldn't you have consulted with me first? Did you have to expose her? It's the Forrester family that's losing face. After yelling that, footsteps approached again, and the door was pounded on loudly. Success. I watched Kaelen's car speed away, and sent a text message to Valentine. Valentine, as I had instructed, sent a text message to Jezebel. Do you like the gift I sent you? It's so easy to impersonate you. Then, she followed my instructions and sent text messages to her gambling-addicted brother and stepmother. Mom, brother, Mr. Forrester's other mistress came to beat me up, forcing me to break up with Mr. Forrester and return all the money. Otherwise, she'll sue our whole family for extortion. Finally, slapping herself repeatedly, she sent a panicked voice message to Kaelen. Mr. Forrester, help. Jezebel is going to kill me. She's at my house, she's going to expose me. After doing all this, Valentine placed her phone in a corner and started a live stream. Having arranged everything, I picked up my phone and sat beside my daughter, who was back to her normal studies, helping her with her homework. In the video, Valentine's door, which she hadn't had time to close, was kicked open. Jezebel's facial implants were completely crooked. She entered, grabbed Valentine's face, and slapped her twice. You little bitch, you dared to trick me. You pretended to be me and went to flaunt yourself in front of Kaelen Forrester's wife, didn't you? Valentine didn't fight back, just dodged. I didn't. Kaelen came and beat me up. How dare you deny it? Valentine dodged and cried. Our relationship is shameful. I was sold to Mr. Forrester by my stepmother and brother. I accepted my fate. But how could you deliberately sabotage Mr. Forrester's marriage? If Kaelen wasn't afraid of the company's stock price plummeting, he'd have divorced that old hag long ago. I'll be Mrs. Forrester sooner or later. This stunt you pulled has caused me a lot of trouble. It'll be a few more years before I can become Mrs. Forrester. You bitch, do you know how much money I'm going to lose? You used that pretty face of yours to seduce Kaelen, didn't you? I'll ruin your face. Jezebel grabbed a pair of scissors and slashed at Valentine's face. Just then, Valentine's brother arrived. He saw Valentine's face, his cash cow about to be destroyed by Jezebel, and kicked her. You bitch. How dare you touch my cash cow? Valentine's mother added another kick, slapping Valentine across the face. Don't you know our family depends on you to get close to Mr. Forrester for money? Why didn't you protect your face? Jezebel was kicked to the ground, her abdomen hitting the coffee table hard. She immediately started bleeding heavily from her lower body. She screamed, took out her phone, and started yelling. Soon, a group of tough-looking young men with tattoos of dragons and tigers surrounded Valentine's apartment. Jezebel, clutching her stomach, yelled, "Take me to the hospital, and then kill these bitches." The young men were hot-blooded and reckless, and their words enraged Valentine's hot-tempered brother. He stepped forward and grabbed Jezebel, preventing her from leaving. Jezebel was bleeding profusely. If she wasn't taken to the hospital to stop the bleeding, her life would be in danger. But Valentine's brother and stepmother were both cruel and ruthless, not to be trifled with. It quickly escalated from verbal abuse to a physical fight. Then, one of the young men pulled out a knife. He was just threatening. Valentine seized the opportunity to scream, yelling in fear when her hot-tempered brother was at his most tense and sensitive. Don't kill my brother. Valentine's brother couldn't stand the provocation. He went berserk, stabbing several of the young men. The young men were also hot-blooded. They went to the kitchen, grabbed knives, and started fighting back. Just then, the door opened. Jezebel saw Kaelen and, as if seeing her savior, weakly called out. But Valentine's brother, like a demon seeing red, lunged at her with the knife. What happens when a person seeing red encounters someone who is irrational? I opened a social media app. The top trending story was, Mistress provokes, other mistress's brother kills 5, cheating husband stabbed 24 times, critically injured. The online users, always like bloodthirsty hyenas, immediately dug into the truth behind the trending events. Although Kaelen's face was blurred, I'd recognize his body even if it were reduced to ashes. The stab wounds on his body were still gushing blood. It was so satisfying. Valentine, covered in blood, was rescued by the police, who arrived immediately after I called them. Jezebel, due to excessive blood loss, was in a coma and still in the ICU. Valentine's brother, seeing red, attacked indiscriminately, nearly injuring the police officers rescuing Valentine. He was shot dead on the spot by a sniper. Valentine, terrified, huddled in the police car, shaking. But I knew she wasn't afraid. She was excited. She secretly sent me a text message. She said, "Anya, I'm free. I'm really free." Yes, her stepmother and brother were a dark cloud hanging over her, one that would never dissipate. They would always shatter her hopes for a better life, just when the sun seemed to shine on her. The past sexual abuse by her brother hadn't broken her, but the constant leeching, the repeated destruction of her chances to get on the right track, had driven her to the brink. If I hadn't appeared, Valentine would have faced a tragic death. "Anya, don't worry. I'll handle things with the police." The phone I had prepared for her was the kind that self-destructed messages after being read. It wouldn't leave any trace on the internet. I turned off the screen, and my daughter looked at me, puzzled. "Mommy, why are you so happy all of a sudden?" "I can't solve this problem, and I'm not happy at all." I stroked her head. "Come, Mommy will teach you." I slowly helped my daughter solve a math problem. About half an hour later, my personal phone rang. "Is this Mr. Kaelen Forrester's wife?" I heard the sounds of footsteps in the background and knew it was a call from the hospital's emergency room. "Yes, it is." "What's the matter?" The doctor's voice was grave. "Mrs. Forrester, could you please come to City General Hospital? Your husband has suffered a serious injury and is in critical condition. We need you to sign the consent form." "I'm sorry." I smiled, tears welling up in my eyes, but my voice remained filled with infinite sorrow. After all, my daughter has a final exam soon, and I need to tutor her. You know, education is paramount. I hung up the phone and posted a message on social media. The gist was that I never thought my husband would cheat and cause such a scandal. I was ashamed to face the Forrester family ancestors. I also included a picture of the land purchase certificate, subtly implying that the family was out of money, the land couldn't be sold quickly for cash, I had a daughter to raise, and all this was my only recourse. The hacker, cooperating perfectly, immediately pushed my post to the top of the trending charts. With the concrete evidence from me, the legal wife, Kaelen's affair and the murderous fight between his mistresses became an undeniable scandal. Of course, online users sympathized with me, the struggling single mother who had to support her family and hide her husband's death from her daughter. How innocent the first was. I was just a single mother struggling to support her family. So, I decisively transferred Kaelen's seemingly unprofitable shares and entrusted them to professional trust institutions and managers. As for my daughter, I didn't want to pressure her. She just needed to be happy. Whatever path she chose in the future, whether it was a life of luxury but mediocrity, or inheriting the company, the choice was hers. On the day of Kaelen's funeral, many friends came, not forgetting to laugh at me even at the funeral. I brought my daughter, showing no sign of weakness. The boy who always bullied my daughter winked at her at the funeral. His mother mocked me. "You really can't judge a book by its cover." We all thought Kaelen Forrester was a good man, but it turns out he was playing around so much, putting so many green hats on you. And now he's gone. "Sis, what are you going to do now?" "What am I going to do?" "Live a happy life with tens of millions in inheritance, of course." From the moment I discovered Kaelen's infidelity, I had subtly encouraged him to buy large insurance policies for both of us, saying I was worried about our daughter's future after we were gone. Kaelen, with his preference for sons, never intended to let our daughter inherit the company, so he naturally agreed with me. I exploited his fixed mindset and successfully secured $60 million in compensation. So, when the bully boy's mother tried to one-up me, I burst into tears. I don't know what to do. Luckily, when he was alive, he bought high-value insurance for the whole family. Now, there's some compensation, not much. Just $60 million after taxes. With the $20 million trust, it's enough for us mother and daughter to live on. At least, we won't have to beg for money. The bully boy's mother's face turned visibly green. I continued to cry. Seraphina is doing well. She got first place in her final exams. If Kaelen knew, he could rest in peace. The competition between housewives is always about children and husbands. As a widow with a huge inheritance, I didn't have to ask for money like she did, and my daughter was doing better than her son. Seeing her turn around and beat the bully boy, I felt much better. I took my daughter's hand and walked out of the cemetery. In front of the car, Valentine, dressed in a black suit, had changed her usual weak demeanor. Her short hair was sharp and stylish. She opened the car door for me. Mrs. Chen, where to? She called me Mrs. Chen, not Mrs. Forrester. Now, her role was our family's special assistant, helping us mother and daughter manage our lives. She was also studying for her adult education exams and would study abroad with my support. She was my final safeguard for my daughter. If my daughter inherited the company, she would be the best helper. If my daughter chose to live a carefree life, she would be the best professional manager for the company. She was very smart, a good seed dragged down by her family. I smoothed my daughter's braids and smiled genuinely. To the supermarket. Let's buy some good food to celebrate. Valentine's epilogue. My name is Valentine. I was a mistress, a shameful mistress. My family life was not good, and in my youth, I was sexually abused by my stepbrother. They ruined my life, severing me from my beloved studies. I thought my life was over. But Mrs. Forrester, no, Mrs. Chen's appearance gave me a glimmer of hope. From the moment she appeared before me, I knew she was Kaelen Forrester's wife. I knew she was using me. So what? She could get me out of that hell, and that was enough. But I didn't expect her to help me so much. My stepmother and brother died under her scheme, one shot dead on the spot, the other driven insane, dying in a mental hospital after being stabbed in a fight. She did nothing, and I did nothing. Our hands were clean. The villain's self-destruction completely cleared the dark clouds hanging over my head. Afterward, she gave me a job as a special assistant and encouraged me to study. I know she is my benefactor. She gave me a second life, and in return, I will protect her and her child for the rest of my life. Seraphina's epilogue. My name is Seraphina Forrester. No, I should be called Seraphina Thorne now. I don't like the surname Forrester. The Forrester surname betrayed my mother. Let me tell you a secret. I always knew my father betrayed my mother. My mother was so pitiful, kept in the dark, and for my sake, she lost her dignity and her happiness. So I encouraged the older fools to switch the pills in the sleeping pill bottle with candies, and I deliberately let the teacher discover that I had swallowed a huge amount of sleeping pills. This brand of candy is really disgusting, so sweet it made me want to cry. But thinking about how much my mother had suffered for me, how much she had endured, always for me, tolerating those women flaunting themselves in front of her. I didn't want my mother to suffer anymore. So after I woke up, I drank 2 liters of water. But it was worth it. This way, my mother could finally, without any scruples, deal with those women. And my father, who betrayed us. My world only has my mother, and I only need my mother. We have each other, and that's enough. The end.